Welcome to Battle Rankings. My name is Svetlana, and this is your editorial ghost before the content. I have allergies really bad. They're better now, but while I was recording, they were not great, and you can hear it a lot. But we must continue on with the show, so enjoy. Welcome to Battle Rankings podcast. My name is Svetlana Meyer, and today I'm joined with Ian Gull. We're doing another Masters interview. Ian was at the Team Yankee 2022 Masters, and we're just going to talk about his experience. So I'm just going to start off, Ian, with what got you started in with Flames of War and Team Yankee?
Well, it's kind of the boring story of, when I was growing up at my parents' house, my dad was doing miniature hobbying since he moved to Minnesota from North Dakota. And as soon as I was around first grade, he was like, Ian, do you want to come into a game that I'm playing in and just watch and move some of the figures for me? And I'm like, sure, I'll do that. It was very cool just seeing this big battlefield of stuff. And it's like, oh, wow, this is really awesome. These little action figure guys doing this and that. And I get to control them and figure out how to tactically do this. And I think I truly got into Flames of War and Team Yankee when my dad just met Chuck Heiner, who did a set of like tournaments and stuff from lacrosse in Wisconsin. And my dad's played Flames of War since version 1 days. And when I got into Team Yankee, he's like, well, here's a World War III game. It has Soviets, West Germans, and the whole 9 yards. Let's try it out and have some fun with it.
All right. So you've been easily playing over 10 years.
Yep.
Would that be about accurate then?
Yeah, it'd be about accurate around there.
All right. So when did you first start doing tournaments then?
I think my first tournament was in 2013 this was during version 3. I think it was an early war tournament, and I was playing with my dad's French. And I do remember I took last place. And we have a dinosaur trophy where if you get really bad rolls, and I was the one who happened to get the photo of that with the dinosaur. It's like, oh, Ian got the T-Rex rolls. He was rolling terrible and all this. It was overall a really good experience as well. Let's see, probably a 12-year-old me, a 10-year-old me playing a tabletop game. You're having fun on a weekend when you're not at school.
You got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
I'm sure you're not a very fun person to play at risk with. So what's your favorite army to play? I'm sure you've played all of them.
Yeah, we have every army that you could think of for Flames or Team Yankee. I think by far my favorite in terms of just enjoying is probably playing Russians because of the sheer amount of hordes you get to play with. And, just being able to say, yeah, I have 24 BMP2s today. I have this many tanks. I have like 25 T-55s. I have this big block of Russian infantry. There's everybody. You just have a swarm, and you get to really act like, I don't know, like an ant from an ant colony and just move everything towards your opponent. And it's like, yeah, I have all this stuff.
That makes sense. That makes sense. The more things, the more fun.
Yep.
So what's influenced your play style? I'm sure learning from your dad has impacted it a lot.
Oh, my dad has been a pretty good influencer on how my styles of playing Flames of War and Team Yankee are. I really think the most that has influenced my play style is maybe like some war movies. I don't really know what's a big factor of what influenced me to be like, okay, if I do this will affect me in that way. What will I do today as the strategy since I'm using this list for this tournament? I kind of really just go with, I have these guys. I need to make sure that they're alive. I need to make sure that they can do this for me. I need to get as much usage I can get out of them without having them get murdered off the table.
Fair. All right. So have you been to Masters before this year?
So not this year, just Team Yankee Masters, but in 2021, I had my first Masters, which was the Flames of War Masters, and that was a mid-war having 6 rounds of 6 different lists, and if you won, you didn't have to use that. You couldn't use that list anymore. If you lost with that list, you can keep using it. And it was a very interesting experience, and also it was pretty dang hard making 6 lists with the mid-war Russians because it's like, well, I can't have this in this list, but I can have this in this list, and it was kind of funny at the time. So they originally went with you couldn't have the same units. And with Russians, you have Russian guards and then you have your regular Russians. And they originally said that you couldn't do that. And then I brought it up saying, okay, this is the guards, they have their own different set of things, and then this is the regular guys. They're clearly different. They have their own set of things. And then they're like, yep, that's perfectly okay.
All right, so that was your first Masters. Were you expecting an invite with this year's tournament?
Yeah, I was expecting an invite. I took 10th overall in the Venation for last year's season, and I knew the invite was coming. I was pretty excited. My first Team Yankee Masters. I tried really hard the season before. I took 17th overall, and everyone in the top 16 took the Masters invite. So it was a slight big letdown, but there's always another season, and you never know what you can do.
Right, right. So you were really excited about getting your getting the Masters invite. What was your expectation of going to Masters?
I think my biggest expectation was, what were the rules going to be? Are we going to do like this big tank battle thing, or are we going to do something like a normal tournament? Because Team Yankee, although it has all these grandest things that you can do and mess around with, there's a lot of limitations that it has on it, unlike Flames of War, where you have everything is unique. You have these command cards that can give you a hero. You have these command cards that can give you special abilities, while Team Yankee is you just have these units. And my only expectation was, are we just going to do a normal tournament? Are we going to have just a tank battle? And it ended up being a tank battle. And
Yeah.
I was honestly expecting a lot of Leo 1 swarms, which there was only 2 or 3, which that surprised me very big. And for the Russians too, I was pretty surprised too that no one except for me and John Cederberg took advantage of the T-55 swarm, which really worked to my expectation.
All right, so the situation was the MacGuffin. So what did you have to take for your MacGuffin?
So for the Soviets, we either could have taken the T-72B or the T-80. And at the time when I was making my list and talking it over with John Cederberg, we both came under the consensus of that the T-80 was the better choice for points wise, because the reserves was 48 points, and having 4 of them is around 32 or 36 points, and having that many points in your reserve pool, and especially having your MacGuffin unit off the board, it really helps a lot, because you don't have to worry about potentially losing that MacGuffin unit very quickly, because, well, Russians are hit on 3, so they're going to get hit.
Yeah. And then only having 1 infantry unit. How did you feel about that?
I took that with a bunch of glee, and I said, well, the Russians or any other Warsaw Pact player is going to have the biggest advantage on planet Earth, because with the sheer amount of stuff you can get out of a Russian big BMP-2 block or a Czechoslovakian, East German, Polish, the whole 9 yards, having that 24 BMP-2s with that AT-21 missile and having all those RPG-7 VRs it's brutal. And the saying goes, you can never kill a BMP-2 company if it's that big in a game. It's so impossible, because your opponent can never focus on it fully on the whole entire game, because there's tanks, there's airplanes, there's artillery you have to worry about, and having that infantry swarm basically moving around the map, being the king of the map, it's really scary, especially with a Soviet block of BMP2s and the infantry because of their 3-up counterattack, their 3-up fearlessness. It's terrifying.
All right. So, how did those rules impact your list building and strategies?
So for impacting my list building, I was it was kind of weird doing it. I originally wanted to do a T-62 swarm, and I looked at the numbers, and also I really wanted to have a big block of Russian infantry because, well, you got to have that. It's a must need. And when I was taking a look at that, I'm like, well, T-62s, they have that AT-21 gun on them. They have the fearlessness, they have the armor, but they're pricey. And having at least 4 in a platoon it's pretty expensive, especially when I could just field 7 T-55s for 11 points with the missiles included already. And then also being able to add so much chaff, such as gophers, the Gaskins, the Shilkas, the Carnations, and then just having the infantry as support. You're going to have a big formation no matter what.
Yeah.
I did think of having a second formation. I didn't really knew what to choose from. I just decided to go with one formation just so I don't have to hassle around going with, okay, I have all these guys on here. They're from this formation, and then I have this formation with these guys, and then I have to jumble around making sure I don't lose that formation without realizing it, and just, trying to keep everything in your head, trying to think, okay, I need to focus on these guys, but I'm going to be potentially leaving these guys alone when they should be used. So just having that one formation was super helpful, and especially having those T-55s.
All right. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Let's see. So for the strategy, that was kind of it's hard again because when the strategy for Soviets is generally you gotta bum rush the NATO player if you're playing against NATO, because NATO has the one weakness where they don't have a lot of stuff. But when you're at a 120 point value, they have more stuff, but you still have more stuff than them because Warsaw Pact, you can just keep piling and piling on stuff. And I think my overall strategy was just to get the defense out of the way, because with a big Russian infantry block, you really can't be punched through with that. They're just going to sit in that corner of the map. They're probably not going to get touched. They can still have their BMP2s roam around and shoot. Maneuvering, attacking, it's generally the same thing with the Soviets. You can just have this one thought of going, well, I can go on the offensive. I might lose stuff, but am I really going to lose everything? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just go defensive if I really wanted to. And still, yeah, I lose these guys, but I still have this whole line of tanks getting ready.
Yeah. All right. So how did you study for your master's?
So the only really big studying I did was I did look over all of the lists when lists were posted from Joe in an email. I looked over them all. I didn't have much time to practice playing games with my dad because I work and I'm also a police reserve officer for my local department. So I got a lot of stuff that I'm doing. And I think I only got 2 practice games in, and that was about it. One was with the T-62s, and then once the list deadline came out, I went with T-55s, and I did a T-55 game test, and that went really well. And I was like, well, this is the only practice I'm going to get. Let's just get ready and have fun at Masters.
So what was your expectation then of how your list was going to perform?
So my expectation was, so when you have T-55s for Soviets, you're going to lose them very quickly, but the amount of damage that you can get off of those T-55s before they die, it's really good. And throughout Masters, I think at most I lost 2 platoons of T-55s. But from what they did with having that AT-18 that took firepower, no slow firing, they really did quite a number on, you know, when the NATO has some smaller tanks that don't have the front of 15 or 16, and then, you know, having the Warsaw Pact where they only have maybe a front of 14 unless it's a T-72B, and having those missiles on the T-55s helped quite a lot. And my artillery did okay. I think the major overall winner for me was just having those T-55s with the missiles, having AT-21 was super good. And also having that Russian infantry of just moving up and advancing was super good. It definitely did its job.
All right, so you got your list all together. You got to Indianapolis. What was your initial reaction of seeing everyone there with their lists? Like, not just like looking at Chris Jackson's bringing this person's bringing this, John Myers bringing this, you're bringing this. What was your reaction when you actually saw the things on the board?
It's like, oh, it's all there. It's a lot of stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I better get ready for this because it's a lot of stuff on a table. You got to really look at everything and be like, oh, okay, he's moving this stuff over here. I'm moving this stuff over here. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. I probably should move these guys before I go into my shooting phase because it's so much stuff when you're at 120 points. You got to really be careful of what you have on your table and not forget about, oh, I kind of forgot a unit on reserves. And it is kind of funny. In Keith and I's game in round 3, I took more reserves than I should have. I accidentally took another T-55 group off when I was playing against them. I'm like, oh. And I was on the attack, and we were playing, I think it was Breakthrough. It was some mission. I don't remember. But I forgot a unit of T-55s, and it's like, yep. And I mean, I still won the game, but it's just realizing when you don't have a unit on that you should be having on, it's like, oh, probably should be careful about my point calculations here.
You find out what the game changers are.
Exactly.
So what was your most challenging matchup?
I think my most challenging matchup was Chris Fretz. We drew 3-3. It got to the point where I killed off all of his Leo 1s, and I was pretty much hurting. I lost all my BMP2s. I lost 2 units of T-55s, and he was at the point where he had his Leo 2s on, and he still had both of his PTRL platoons on. And it's like, okay, I just got my T-80s on. I don't have much ground to cover, and I have to protect this objective because if I leave from it, he's going to bring his Leo 2s on. It was just a situation of where, okay, if I move this, Chris, you can shoot at it and kill it. But if you move this stuff, I can shoot it and kill it. It was just a point of we were deadlocked. We couldn't do anything else because we just punched each other so hard. And it was like, well, we can't do anything really anymore. We already did as much as we could.
So what lessons did you learn at this Masters?
I learned that, that's a very hard question. I think the biggest lesson that I learned was maybe having a bigger sense of being careful with your units, I guess. In the last round against your husband, John, I was very aggressive with my T-80 MacGuffin unit, and I could have been very less aggressive with that because I pushed my T-80s onto the objective that he was holding with his T-62s, and he sprung his ambush and killed all but 2 of them. And then the next turn rolls by, the T-80s are gone because he brings in the next set of T-62s that he has, and it's like, oh. But I mean, at the same time, I guess they held down the objective. That's what was important. I had my Russian infantry coming right up, and I think just protecting the MacGuffin unit was the biggest lesson that I learned, because you gotta make sure you keep them alive because that's your extra point that you don't want to lose, and it's also your big unit that does most of the work for you.
It's all about the assets there.
Exactly.
So how did your opponents play into your strategy and deployment?
So I think the one opponent that impacted my strategy the most, where I was the most aggressive, was it was in my fourth round. I forgot the name. He's from Pennsylvania, I believe, and he was running the Canadian Leo 1 Swarm. And
Rich. Tim
McClellan, there we go.
Okay.
I defended against him, and he attacked me. I canceled out all of his spearhead because I had my BMP scouts, and the problem that I encountered was he was being super aggressive with his Abrams and his Leo 1s towards my objective, and it was to the point where I lost almost all my BMP 2s and 1 unit of 55s. And I got to the point where he was right on my objective with 2 Leo headquarters and his 4 Abrams. That's what he had left of his tanks. And I had to be very aggressive with my T-80. So what I did is I brought them up to a side on his Abrams that were the 2 closest to the objective, because he only had 2 Abrams and the 2 Leos on that objective. And I had to bring up my infantry. So I had like 6 RPG-7 VRs lined up. I had the little RPGs from the AK stands. And it's like, man, I have to be really aggressive on a defending mission here, because he was really trying to do his last ditch effort on my objective. And I just managed to roll so darn well. I got the 2 hits from the 2 T-80s on the side shots. And it's like, oh, great. And then I had my RPG-7s just shot, and it's like hitting on 6s, and I get 4 hits. And it's like, oh, okay. That's how the cookie crumbles when you roll that good on your dice.
So did you win against Tim then?
Yes, I did. It was a 7-2, I believe.
Okay. I also apologize if there's a ghost voice over here. That is not Panzer Ghost. We do not have Panzer Ghost here. But John is kind of off camera, just chilling out, silently observing.
Watching what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. Did anything happen that you did not anticipate? And how did you react to any unanticipated events?
I think my biggest thing that I did not anticipate was my 3rd round against Keith. He did I would say it was a pretty big mistake that he did. He had a group of 4 Leo 1s, and they were 16 inches within on my group of 7 T-55s. And he could have had 8 shots hitting me on 3s, no problem. And he had another set of Leo 1s that could have done the same thing. And instead, he went after all of my AA, which I was like, Keith, what are you doing here? Like, my AA shouldn't be your problem. Granted, he has Harriers, so the big airplanes are going to kill your tanks. But when you have 7 T-55s and more tanks coming right up the rear from those tanks, it's definitely, you should target those and kill those, because by next turn, which I exactly did what I did, I went right up to his Leo 1s and shot them off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, Keith, come on, shoot the T-55s. It's their sole purpose in life. It's to get shot and die from a Leo 1, of all things.
Figuring out whose priorities are where.
Yeah.
And how did you do in that matchup then?
I ended up winning 6-3. I took the objective from him with my Russian infantry. I basically pushed his British infantry off because I just kept chipping away with the AK shots, the tank shots that I had left. I kept on killing infantry. And he had no more infantry within 4 inches, so I just moved the Russian infantry up. I'm like, I have the objective now. Are you going to move up and do something? And nothing really happened from that. He didn't move up anything to the objective, and I just won.
So how did your finish meet your expectations?
So the funny thing, on the car ride over to Indianapolis with my dad, I told him, top 6 would be really nice. Maybe 6th place would be super great. I don't care. As long as I'm top 6, that's all that matters to me. I'm not the person where I want to be the champion. I want to be number 1. I want to be the champion. I want to be the champion. And I just told him, 6th place or 5th place, 4th place, that'd be good enough for me. I'm there for the fun. I'm not there to I want to be the champion. And when when Joe was announcing results and he said 6th place, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I got my expectation, I guess.
So, and your list performed. How did that perform?
It performed super well. Exactly from when I was discussing with John when we both decided to do T55 swarms. Me and him were discussing, okay, this is what we can anticipate. Like the T55s, they're going to get shot, but the problem is they're still going to do what they needed to do. They're going to kill off the NATO player or the Warsaw Pact player's stuff. You have the big Russian block of infantry, and you just be aggressive as much as you can with that. It performed very well to my expectations, and I thoroughly enjoyed that list.
A list that you wish you could play again, but probably won't.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So what would you tell somebody going to Masters for the first time, or really working for that Masters slot?
I think the biggest thing, and I guess this is coming from a college kid who's 19 years old. For me, I'm not that person who wants to always be in the top 16. Granted, I do. I would really love to be going to Masters every year because it's something that I really enjoy, being with the top dogs and, playing with the really hard players who know probably a little bit more than me, but also having that same skill level of, okay, I know I can do something here. I definitely know I can win some games here. I can lose some games. And I think the biggest thing that for a new person that's looking to get into Masters is just have fun at tournaments. It's not all about getting that first place ticket. It's just about having the fun. And if you are really, really aspiring to be a Masters player, just work very hard, go to as much tournaments as you can. Try to get at least top 3 because that's the most amount of points you'll probably get, because I think 3rd place on average is like 70 points. And then going up from there is then you have 78 points. And then 1st place is usually 81 points or 85, depending on how many people you have.
Yeah. So this is kind of a tangent question. Do you do the play any tabletop club or whatever at your university then?
So with the college that I'm going to, I don't really socialize with those people. I mean, I never had for the tabletop miniature side of things, especially in today's day and age, and especially with a college student, when you bring it up to them, it's like, oh, is it something like D&D? And I think the most, yeah, so for my college, it's D&D players. And I don't personally like D&D. I don't play D&D either. And if I brought up, hey, I play this World War II game and I play this World War III game with these little minifigures, and it's like, huh? What is that? And it's kind of funny when I was going through high school with my buddies, and they know that I play this. And, when they see all of the stuff of miniatures, it's like, holy crap, dude, what is this? And it's just more of a, okay, so you do this. It's not a, oh, I'd really love to try that out with you. I maybe had one friend play a few games with me, and that was just about it.
Fair enough. I was just wondering because the university I got my bachelor's at, they had a tabletop club or whatever, and they would, I don't know what they did. I wasn't too involved with student organizations, but I knew it existed. I just wasn't particularly involved.
No worries.
And I didn't know if like you did anything like that as well. If it was like D&D or just like, we're going to play Monopoly for 12 hours or Catan or whatever like that. So what would you tell somebody just starting out with Teen Yankee or Flames of War? They're flirting with the idea. What would you tell them?
I would say definitely get into it. Definitely research if you want to be in NATO or Warsaw Pact. Definitely take a look at your heart, saying, are you an aggressive player? Are you a defensive player? Or are you a player that'll do things in the heat of the moment? And the biggest thing for me is what fits your play style. And for me, I can mess around with whatever playstyle I want to go with. I can play West Germans really well, especially with the Martyr 2 Swarm. I can do really well with Soviets with just the sheer mass of troops you can get.
Yeah.
And like I said, it just matters of what is your playstyle and knowing that you will enjoy it, have fun with them, paint them, do whatever you want with them, and make a story out of them if you really want to. We have some guys in Minnesota creating Soviet Ukrainian armies and, having the little tractor objectives or the Russian warship joke that's been going around. And yeah, it's just a matter of what's your play style? What do you want to do? What faction specifically suits you? Do you want to be NATO or Warsaw? And, don't be afraid to go with whatever you want. Don't go after the biggest thing I'd say is don't go after the top dogs lists. Don't play what they play just to be the top dog. Play what you want to play and play what you want to enjoy to play.
Something that I've learned from just trying to play John's lists at tournaments, like he'll make up a list for me really fast. Like, oh, hey, here you go. You're ringer for my tournament. So here's your list. Here's your army if I need you. I know he doesn't jip me on my lists normally. I hope not anyways. But I know for a fact that me with a good list is like an angry kitten. We're like, that's a good list and it's cute, but you're harmless. But if he had the list, it would actually be a horrifying list to go up against. So yeah, don't take it from the baby seal. Do not go after. Don't try to play these top lists that like Masters players try to go for. Because if you're not at the skill level to efficiently play those lists, you're gonna have an angry kitten moment.
Why is this stuff not doing what they get to do? Why is it not working? Why is it not doing what I want to do?
Exactly. You're going to have that moment. And then you're just going to be like, aw, I really wanted to use that. And then you can't.
Yep.
All right. Good talking to you. Is there anything else that you want to add in or that we might have missed before we go?
No, not really. All I have to say is thank you for inviting me to an interview. I told my dad as soon as you invited me to the interview, I'm like, oh, sweet, my first Masters interview. This is great. I want to enjoy this as much as possible, which I truly did. And it's always good to have, the new faces, especially me, because this is my only second Masters and probably more to come. And, just being able to have an interview with someone like you and then, showing and telling, okay, this is what I did at Masters. This is how I think of things. And this is how my list did.
Right. And like we kind of talked about before the show started, the intent of doing these interviews with the players that you ranked 6th, you weren't in the top 3. You're still, obviously you're not novice, but compared to Chris Jackson, you're like not the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear you. I think it's important to hear your voice just as much as it is important to hear about the knowledge and skills learned and lessons learned along the way of 20 years of playing the game as well.
Yes.
Because hearing new voices is important, and everyone has something to bring to the table.
Exactly.
So thank you for coming on, and I hope you have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.